In our next session, which is a very interesting session that is, the World GBC together with partners EBRD and UN Habitat will be launching the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework. For this, we will be handing over to Amira Ayoub, World GBC MENA Programs Head. Over to you, Amira.
Thank you so much, Hind. Hello, everyone, and welcome at our Middle East and Africa Green Building Congress. I am Amira Ayoub, the head of MENA programs at World Green Building Council. It is such a great pleasure to be here with you today at the Congress and at the launch of the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework. We will start our session today by an introductory presentation by Christina Gamboa, the World Green Building Council CEO. Welcome, Christina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Gamboa. I'm the CEO of the World Green Building Council. And I'm very happy to be at this event, at this launch event of the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Guidelines. This photograph on your screens was taken after the tragic port explosion in Lebanon in 2020. Hundreds of lives were lost and thousands were injured, and their impact on people's livelihoods are still being felt today. As we're all painfully aware, disasters like these know no borders. They can happen to anyone, anywhere. And my heart really goes out to those who have experienced or are experiencing this type of unimaginable hardship. That is why my session with you today is about what we can do to build back better. World GBC is working towards a future where everyone, everywhere, can live, work, and play in a sustainable built environment. To achieve this vision, we have a network of over 70 green building councils from around the world. Our global network understands that every place, community, and city is unique. And therefore, we must ensure that sustainability can be integrated in all geographical and cultural contexts, addressing all needs. An important part of this is, of course, reconstruction. For us, the first step for reconstruction or building back better is facilitating knowledge for an equitable transition to sustainable, low-carbon infrastructure solutions that, of course, bolster resiliency for all communities and economies. For many parts of the world, this includes reconstruction efforts for communities recovering from disaster, conflict, or needing a better quality of life. That is why I'm incredibly proud of the work we have been leading with our partners at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, UN Habitat, and our green building councils in Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Palestine. We have to come together to collaborate and to develop a tool to address this critical issue, the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework. This framework is a new toolkit for addressing this topic and helping us build back better in areas that have experienced natural disasters or conflict. So we pulled expertise from across our networks, and the framework focuses on the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean. This guidance is an important foundation that can be adopted to other regions experiencing both conflict or natural disasters. Setting out 6 key principles for action, the framework demonstrates that disaster risk reduction and sustainable urban reconstruction can restore the well-being of communities, revitalize their livelihoods, and support their social and cultural life. Across our Middle East and Africa region, which encompasses the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean at World GBC, the need for reconstruction is significant. Urban areas and essential infrastructure from across Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, and Gaza have suffered large-scale damage and destruction due to multiple ongoing conflicts. Estimates suggest that over $560 billion will be needed across the region just to repair and rebuild what was previously there. Losses from Lebanon's port explosion are estimated between $4 and $5 billion US. The reconstruction cost is estimated to be around $10 billion. and around 660,000 registered refugees currently live in Jordan, resulting in one of the fastest population increases in modern history. Environmental disasters, such as the recent cyclone that has devastated Oman back in 2021, and others, have damaged a lot of homes, affected communities. In the aftermath of these disasters, we must responsibly use our knowledge to support Building Back Better, focusing on how to improve infrastructure and the provision, of course, of services in a sustainable and equitable manner, especially in the energy sector. So our proposal to build more resilient countries and communities is around this framework that is structured around 6 themes to address not just disasters, but also the opportunities. Because in adversity, humanity has also the chance to thrive. The 6 themes are efficient resource utilization, heritage, health and well-being, environmental and climate resilience, sustainable mobility, and finally, integrative social and economic resilience. The framework does not propose a one-size-fits-all solution, but has been developed to highlight key issues, approaches, and methods. It proposes solutions that support World GBC's framework for health and well-being and World GBC's whole life carbon proposals and roadmaps, as well as EBRD's environmental and social policies corresponding performance requirements. This will be a living document that is going to be addressing changing environmental and socioeconomic landscapes for reconstruction in the region. And we have accompanied the 6 principles with a range of useful, informative material to raise awareness and, importantly, capacity of key stakeholders to improve decision-making, project design, and evaluation. The framework is particularly powerful for defining 3 main things. One is the essential conditions that must be in place for the framework implementation to be effective, the overarching health, equity, environmental principles that apply across all elements of the framework, and finally, how to use the framework across the building life cycle. Of course, we also need to how best localize the developments in post-crisis priorities. So this new guidance offers an opportunity to gather humanitarian and construction sector actors, of course, development partners, and rethink how can we also work better together. The holistic nature of the framework also means that it can be used by a diverse set of stakeholders, such as the private sector, international donors, public entities, local communities, international and local NGOs, and many more. Over the coming months, we will be working with our partners and green building councils locally to implement the framework as an education resource, an assessment and planning checklist, an advocacy tool, and of course, a stepping stone for the use of verification bodies or certification tools that can help us deliver all of these ambitions at a greater pace and scale. We are very proud to expand the scope of sustainable reconstruction. This is a milestone, but this work is just getting started, far from over. And the next steps we will see are hopefully to promote a wide adoption of the framework. And for that, we will be prioritizing localization and defining contextual reconstruction priorities. 2, documenting and disseminating local case studies, tools, and best practices. Expanding the framework's strategies to cover the operational stage to align with long-term sustainability goals. I also believe that one of the most important steps is having leaders like you to join us in championing this effort. So I hope that many of you will join us on this journey, and I encourage you to reach out to us by contacting World GBC, and in particular, the MENA Programs Head, Amira Ayub. Lastly, I would like to extend my gratitude to EBRD for their support, and particularly to Alex Jakjivanov and Jasmine Tequidi for their environmental and sustainability department support of this work. We also want to thank our partner, UN Habitat, who have been with us since the beginning of this journey, and the many, many, many technical experts that have contributed to this important piece of work. I'm very grateful that I had the chance to address and present this to you today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Christina, for your presentation. This is such a very important moment for our region. And now I invite you all to hear from our project funder and partner, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. I would like to give a warm welcome to Alex Hadzinavou, the Associated Director and the Green Economy Strategist at EBRD. Welcome, Alex.
Dear Green Building colleagues and friends, thank you very much for inviting me to your Congress today, and I'm honored to speak to you. EBRD, as one of the regional multinational development banks, operates across Central and Eastern European countries, Central Asia, and Southern and Eastern Mediterranean countries like Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, West Bank and Gaza, Tunisia, and Morocco. Our mandate is to assist countries in the region in their transition to open, inclusive, and competitive market economy, to support their economic development and, where necessary, support reconstruction in post-conflict areas. Sadly enough, we have again destructive conflicts in our region. The bank offers significant support to Ukraine and to neighboring countries affected by the current crisis. As I mentioned, we aim to support our region with transition to open and competitive market economy, but we would like this transition to be also transition to low carbon, environmentally sustainable and inclusive development. From its very inception in 1991, the bank has adopted robust environmental and social policies. These set a list of performance criteria addressing environmental and social risks and impacts, resource efficiency and pollution prevention, biodiversity conservation, labor and working conditions, health and safety, cultural heritage, and other. Every single investment we support is checked against these environmental and social policies. 2 years ago, the bank adopted our Green Economy Transition 2.1, an ambitious initiative aiming to scale up green activities, to optimize in specific functional areas, and to develop new activities contributing in practical terms to a green economy recovery following the severe impact of COVID-19 health emergency. The GET approach, Green Economy Transition, will remain anchored on the transition, client-driven, and private sector business model of the EBRD, and in line with its operating principles of transition impact, sound banking, and additionality. Reflecting deep market failures in this area, practical policy work in close cooperation with countries of operation will have an important role alongside the financing activities of the bank. The objective is, by 2025, up to half of our annual business investments to become green. These investments should generate net greenhouse gas emission reductions of 25 to 40 million tons per year over the GET period based on cumulative ex-ante estimates. We all know that countries in MENA region and sub-Saharan Africa are already facing disastrous consequences of climate change. We have here worldwide most water-stressed countries. Climate change is destroying traditional agriculture models and accelerates social and other conflicts and inequality. The region is facing major urbanization and migration trends, which put significant pressure on urban infrastructure and urban development as such. Obviously, EBRD is responding to these needs, and we invest in development of sustainable urban infrastructure, urban transport, power and water supply infrastructure, supply with green and sustainable renewable energy, wastewater treatment plants, housing, affordable housing, and commercial and public buildings. For example, this is our Green City program, as well as infrastructure programs undertaken by our banking colleagues. The challenges, and particularly in post-conflict areas, are enormous. They do require wider collaboration at different levels. Where necessary, The bank offers not only finance, but also technical assistance and policy dialogue dedicated to building up local capacities, identification and assessment of more sustainable investment opportunities, development of supportive regulatory framework. I'm very proud to mention as one brilliant example of such successful collaboration of the development of the Sustainable Reconstruction Framework by the World GBC MENA and Africa in collaboration with UN Habitat. Probably our colleagues from the World Green Building Council will elaborate in detail, but I would like to stress that this is an important piece of work, an interactive guide which converts best international practice of sustainable urban development and reconstruction into local market specifics in easy to understand way. What is particularly important for us is that the framework covers all of our environmental and social policies and their performance requirements. In other words, projects following the general guidance by the framework are highly likely to pass our environmental and social due diligence as compliant, subject of project specifics, of course. This is not the only example of successful collaboration with the World Green Building Council. We're working together in Europe on development of national decarbonization roadmap for buildings. For instance, we have done it in Poland. Adoption of circular economy concepts in buildings and construction. We are working on green mortgages and other activities. What we are particularly excited about and looking forward is the World GBC Beyond Buildings report. This is important as buildings are an integral part of wider infrastructure development. There are synergies and lessons learned which could be applied for any infrastructure. That is why we are looking forward to further collaboration with the World GBC in that area. Thank you very much indeed. We at EBRD are looking forward for working together on green, climate, nature-positive initiatives which could benefit our countries in the region and people and their people. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, Alex, for your words, and thank you, EBRD, for your support and your work to build a low-carbon, green, and resilient built environment. And now it's time to hear from our partners, UN Habitat. Welcome, Dr. Irfan Ali, the regional representative for Arab states at UN Habitat.
Good day, esteemed partners, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to represent UN Habitat Regional Office for the Arab States today at the 4th World GBC Middle East and Africa Green Building Congress. Thank you for the kind invitation. It's my pleasure to share with you this message during the launch of the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework for the Southern and Eastern Mediterranean. The Arab MENA region is rapidly urbanizing with nearly 56% of its total population living in cities and urban areas, and this is expected to reach 75% by 2050. As the urban population has been steadily on the rise, governments are faced with a growing need to cater to the rapidly rising demands for public services and infrastructure. In many cases, they face mounting challenges that hinder the ability to achieve sustainable and equitable urbanization. For example, in the Arab region, more than 80 million people are living in informal areas and in inadequate housing conditions, which frequently include insecurity of tenure, lack of basic services, especially water and sanitation, inadequate and sometimes unsafe building structures, overcrowding, and locations on hazardous land. Our region is also particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change, and rapid urbanization has pushed people to settle on unsafe and potentially hazardous areas such as flood-prone lowlands and coastal territories. In the recent years, we have witnessed the devastating impacts of climate change, extreme weather events, and climate-induced hazards on cities and urban areas. And the urban poor and vulnerable communities remain at the forefront of the climate crisis. According to the latest assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, cities and urban settlements are crucial for delivering urgent climate action. exposure to climate-driven impacts such as heat waves, urban heat islands, extreme precipitation and storms, in combination with rapid urbanization and lack of climate-sensitive planning, is affecting marginalized urban populations and key infrastructure to climate change. Our region is already the most water-scarce region in the world, with the current utilization rate of water resources estimated at 76.6% compared to about 7.5% worldwide. Water scarcity is a major issue in 19 of the 22 Arab countries, while desertification and land degradation affect 17 countries. There is also an increasing exposure and vulnerability to sea level rise of low-lying coastal communities that is expected to impact over 43 densely populated port cities. We are also witnessing an increase in the frequency and intensity of flash floods, which cause devastating impacts on both the built and the natural environment. As a region with the highest concentration of migrants and refugees in the world, the MENA region hosts over 26 million refugees and internally displaced persons. The protracted conflicts in the region have also led to widespread destruction and devastating losses to local communities. Internally displaced persons, refugees, and informal settlers are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts, as they often settle in areas that are at high risk of extreme weather events and that suffer from a lack of basic services, let alone their socioeconomic conditions that leave very little room for adaptation. UN Habitat sees the fight against climate change, which presents the single biggest threat to sustainable development, to be won or lost in cities and human settlements. The future of the planet depends on the collective action of governments, cities, and communities. We at UN Habitat also strongly believe in the opportunity that the recovery and reconstruction efforts offer to build back better, safer, and greener, and to strengthen the resilience of communities to future risks by integrating environmental considerations into the recovery work. We also value the work we are able to accomplish with the World Green Building Council to develop the framework to provide technical guidance to support sustainable recovery efforts in the region, strengthening the resilience of communities and raising awareness on climate issues and building capacities. We are happy with the launching today to stimulate and inspire discussions on sustainable recovery and reconstruction and explore areas of synergies to advance our shared objectives. In the end, I would like to thank our partners, the World Green Building Council, and the team of the esteemed technical experts for their valuable contributions for the formulation of this work. I would also sincerely thank the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, for their financial support under the SDG Climate Facility Project, and for sure the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the EBRD. Wish you a successful World GBC Middle East and Africa Green Building Congress. All the best, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Irfan, for your words, and thank you, UN Habitat team, for your valuable contributions to the formulation of the framework. I would also like to thank all our consultants and subject matter experts who contributed in this project. And now it is time for our panel discussion, where we will initiate a conversation on next steps and how the framework will be used on the ground, starting in Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. Please let me welcome our panelists today from our MENA Green Building Councils. Hannah Alam, the representative of Lebanon Green Building Council. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Thank you, Amira.
Raji Hattar, the MENA chair and the chair of Jordan Green Building Council. Welcome, Raji.
Thank you.
Professor Salah Al-Haggar, the president of Egypt Green Building Council. Hello, Dr. Salah.
Oh, thank you, Amira. Hello.
Welcome. And finally, Wujdan Al-Sharif, the co-founder and the CEO of Palestine Green Building Council. Hello, Wujdan.
Okay. Hi, and welcome, everyone.
Hello, Wujdan. How are you? Well, this is the fun part of the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework. This is my favorite part, where we will have this discussion about how to implement it and how to see it and how to see it on the ground. Excuse me. Well, we also at Christina's presentation that the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework is a roadmap where it's up to the stakeholders involved to define the contextual priorities. I want our panelists today to share with us how important is sustainable reconstruction and recovery in your country and reflecting that to its future plans. We can start with Hannah from Palestine, from Lebanon. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Amira. For us in Lebanon, we have seen several traumas. We've gone through several traumas. We've gone through reconstruction, post-Civil War reconstruction. We've gone through post-war reconstruction after Israeli invasions, etc. And finally, the reconstruction after the port. Now, the port is a very special subject, which I can talk about later. But for me, the working on the different reconstruction projects, what really brings my attention always is the fact that when you're working with reconstruction, it's not just, of course, the building and the material and so on, but you're working with communities and with people. And usually in these circumstances, they are divided communities, they are divided into separate areas and separate regions and so on. And that is one of the main problems that is a result of conflict and the result of distance, especially over time. What I find very important about the Sustainable Reconstruction Guidelines and Framework is that it can form a vision that will combine and bring everyone together. Because at the end of the day, we all want clean water, we all don't want pollution, we all want a clean environment. So it is apolitical, it is a vision that is meaningful to all from the different generations, sectarian groups, etc. And therefore it is something that can unite people and bring them together.
That's very insightful. Thank you, Hannah. Wujdan, will you please share with us your point of view?
Yes, well, she's just mentioned that they've been through a number of traumas. That's true. In Palestine, we have almost continuous traumas. Well, the framework, I find it very important, especially within the Palestinian context. I believe that the sustainable reconstruction can target areas with conflict like Gaza and some areas in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, where homes and, in some cases, neighborhoods are being demolished by the occupational forces. In addition to the construction case, we also have other challenges related to the access to our resources like water, energy, which is mostly or fully controlled by the occupation as well. Besides, it is quite impossible to switch to sustainable mobility between cities for the same reason, because it's also, the confiscation of land and the cities is for security reasons also controlled by the occupation. And finally, I believe that this framework draws our attention to the many aspects that we usually overlook because of the continuously emerging conditions in Palestine.
Thank you, Wujdan. Dr. Salah, will you please share with us how you see this important in Egypt?
Thank you, Amira. First, maybe I can say the core of sustainable reconstruction, it is mainly two main items: conservation of natural resources such as water, energy, and materials, and improving the indoor and outdoor environmental quality. And these are the main issues related to sustainable reconstruction. Recently in Egypt, the government of Egypt, they initiated a mega project which is called Hayat Karima to upgrade 50% of the Egyptian population to a higher standard of living. And of course, this will be done. The first phase will be during the next 3 years. And Ministry of Social Solidarity, they get a responsibility to construct 130,000 buildings in rural communities during next year. And they asked Egypt GBC, because Egypt Green Building Council, it is under the umbrella of the Ministry of Social Solidarity, because we are non-profit organization or non-governmental organization, and they asked us to develop a green rating system for such buildings. Keep in mind two things. First, in the building, they are very small. It's almost about 50 meters square to 80 meters square. And also they want to have this rating system يكون simple, cost effective, and efficient. And I formed a technical committee from the Egypt GBC, and we worked together until we finalized Tarshid Hayat Karima, where the Tarshid Hayat Karima is very simple, practical, easy to implement, and the certification cost almost a few $100s, not few $1,000s, few $100s, and this money can be returned during the operation within, I will say, 3 months. And therefore, we were very happy a few weeks ago to have this kind of rating system for Hayat Karima to help the rural community to have their buildings, which is very small buildings, with high improved indoor environmental quality, and at the same time saving the natural resources, which is the key issue behind sustainability.
Thank you, Dr. Salah. This is such a great announcement. We are so happy with what's happening in Egypt on the ground, and I believe that having COP26 as COP27 and COP28 in MENA region, this will create the momentum towards sustainable built environment. And I can see that the real steps are taking place on the ground, and people started to ask. I always said that what is considered as heartbreaking for me is when people don't know what are we doing, what is a sustainability consultancy is about, what is a green building professional is about. So I think that having such a project is very important and tangible that will impact people's life. And I believe that this is so much aligned with how reconstruction could be applied on different contexts, because this is a reconstruction project because of the informal housing units, so it can be applied there as well. Raji, I would like to hear your thoughts about how sustainable reconstruction could be applied in Jordan too.
Thank you, Amira, and thank you, colleagues. Actually, in Jordan, fortunately, till now, we don't have this destruction, and so we look at this framework from a different angle: rehabilitation and retrofitting of existing buildings. We've started a program 4 years back, whereby we go to underprivileged societies where buildings are not even registered anywhere. They just, the owner goes, gets some laborers, and they just build the house, not according to any standard. And we retrofit it in a way that is going to support insulation. We install double glazed windows. We make sure that they have a solar power. So this way, we make sure that this building is going to be energy efficient as much as possible, and also it meets the requirements of, as mentioned earlier, the proper living conditions for people who live in. Because if these buildings are not retrofitted properly, and there is humidity inside during winter, and there is water leakages, the health of the people living inside is a disaster. And people felt after these retrofittings that it was extremely important to do this. So what we saw in the neighborhoods around us, that the local builders started taking the standard that we put, and they started using it in other buildings around the neighborhood. So the framework is extremely important, and I'm sure it will work and support extremely good the buildings that are reconstructed, but also it fits the other dimension that we talked about.
That's very interesting, and it's very interesting to look at it from a different angle, the retrofitting, which is so much needed in the region, because we all know that there is a lot of people are suffering from the sick building syndrome, and they really feel that they need to retrofit their built environment. So I think that this also should be considered in our upcoming steps in the implementation of the framework. And I think that our framework, as Christina said, it's not a one-size-fits-all framework, and whether it's caused the reconstruction, whether it's caused by a disaster or of a socially, economically, or environmentally reasons, they are all relatively common, have common challenges. So that's why we had identified prerequisites to apply these to work with these challenges. We call it the overarching principles. These overarching principles includes integrative system thinking, inclusivity of stakeholders, life cycle approaches, cultural consideration, and priorities. Hannah, I would like to hear your thoughts about the importance of these overarching principles in the region and in Lebanon from your point of view.
Yes, I think one of the things that happens with reconstruction is that I mean, the aim of the guidelines are in a way for a green and clean and energy efficient environment and everything else. I mean, which I think we all agree on. The issue here in reconstruction is the issue of context, because the context of reconstruction, there is an urgency that is very plays a major role in the work and in the projects, an urgency to house people, to give them security, etc., and services such as water and so on. And there is also in the context the issue of the physical condition in terms of the debris that is created and left out after conflict, etc. And on the other hand, the lack of new materials. So this starts creating also a lot of need and a lot of, if you want, urgency for projects. So the context also, as we've mentioned before, is really related to the manpower, because after conflict or during conflict, etc., it is very important that you have the right people to actually run projects and so on and so forth. And when you want to know what you need to do, therefore, it is of extreme importance that you ask people, be inclusive, because what we consider to be a priority might be very different to those that are on the ground. And yet not lose the long-term vision, not sort of answer needs as we go along in a way that is that wastes a lot of material or uses a lot of natural resources and so on. So in a way, what is important here is the issue of having training for people who know how to use this and support this, and really dealing with this very critical context. It's important.
Yes, and Wajdan, if you have also can share with us your thoughts about defining the priorities. Like Hannah said, the inclusivity of the community is very important. Taking people's opinion, having them all the way with you, engaging all the stakeholders, having an integrative system thinking. How do you see this could be applied?
Yeah, I want to. I think I want to again to say that how important is it to do the capacity building for the targeted groups and to do some awareness campaigns for the public. From my point of view, I think we should, if I want to implement this or to promote the implementation of this framework, I would target the bottom-up approach. I would go for to choose to work with the municipalities. we can still work from the high level, but this can be very time consuming. We have recently, from my point of view, because I've been working with some municipalities, working on developing their capacities, we have recently signed MOUs with about 15 municipalities where they are expected to provide some incentives for the people to go green. We believe that if these municipalities can integrate sustainable reconstruction within their strategies and at least get some implemented within the municipal buildings and infrastructure, this can result in the overall movement towards the sustainable reconstruction within the area. This shall include the capacity building and the awareness within the areas of these municipalities. This is one thing. But we can also, and again, I think we should include some other entities like the municipalities. In addition to the municipalities, we need to involve the engineering associations and maybe the designers, the contractors, to check whether how much we can include or integrate the framework within our work.
That's very interesting, especially starting with the awareness and the educational campaigns for all stakeholders. I think this should be the first step because our region really needs this. Raji, I would like to ask you about the buildings and the built environment, the importance of this in the reconstruction and recovery framework. Why built environment is important?
Well, as mentioned, it's a holistic thing. It's an ecosystem. So making sure that the built environment is in accordance to the required standards, it's in accordance to supporting all the environmental related issues and the health related issues is extremely important, because the minute I have a proper building that is in that complies with these regulations, then I'm going to support, I don't want to say support mitigating the climate change, but this is a first step to do that. It's not just buildings, it's the community around you. And I'll go back to the question before, and including the community in the process of implementing these projects. In our project, what we did is that we hired professionals from the local neighborhood, whereby we trained them on these practices, and we made them implement what we trained them on. So we ended up with an aware community that knows how to go green and to move forward.
That's very interesting. Thank you, Raji. Well, I will go back to Professor Salah. Dr. Salah, Egypt Green Building Council, I know that they are currently planning some very interesting work with the government. So how do you see this? How do you see this going with the framework? How are you going to partner with local entities in Egypt to move with this forward?
Yes, I think first, Egypt Green Building Council started in 2012 with a very important mission to promote the concept of sustainability and green building throughout the country. And recently, because we have a lot of reconstruction, mainly to upgrade the standard of living in the slums area and in the rural area. And therefore, we felt part of our responsibility is to help the government through the Ministry of Social Solidarity to upgrade these buildings with the green standard, with the sustainability concept. And therefore, we, of course, planning to have some kind of workshops with the contractors and with some other NGOs, with some developers, to tell them exactly how to build their small buildings with a high efficient in terms of energy consumption, in terms of water consumption, in terms of material use. And we have to make sure, and that's a very important part, is to use the local raw materials available in the village, available in the rural community. Because transporting raw materials from Cairo to the other governorate, that will cost a lot of money, and it is totally against climate change, because you will generate a lot of emissions. And therefore, we are planning, inshallah, to cooperate with the Ministry of Social Solidarity to have this kind of capacity building and guarantee all buildings in Egypt, especially the small buildings, commercial buildings and residential buildings or high-rise building. This is another story because we have two sets of rating system. We have one set of rating system which is very simple, cost-effective, and underline the word cost-effective, and very efficient. But also we have another set of rating systems which is based on net zero concept. And this is applied for commercial, administrative buildings, schools, healthcare facilities, etc. But right now we are focusing mainly through Haya Karima initiative because this is one of the most important initiative. I don't like to say in Egypt, but worldwide to upgrade the standard of living of almost about 50 to 60 million people in Egypt, and therefore we have to support the government to have this upgrade in a sustainable manner.
Amira, if you allow me here, sorry to interrupt. Also,
Yes.
something that's extremely important in all this is implementing of circularity aspects and making sure that we recycle material that is demolished, or we reuse whatever can be reused there. This is extremely important, not to move the rubble, throw it somewhere else, and start from scratch building whatever is coming up.
Yeah, that's very important. That's very important note, Raji. Thank you for this. I would also like to ask all our audience, if you have any question, please post them in the chat box because we will have time to answer it. Let's go back to Hannah. And for those who don't know Hannah, by the way, Hannah was one of the consultants and subject matter experts who worked with us on this project, and she was working from her heart. she wasn't just doing a job, she was like doing it from all of her heart. That's why she was always considering the context of the MENA region and how heritage and culture is important in our region. Hannah, will you please share with us how heritage and culture, we in the MENA region like to celebrate our culture and to respect our heritage. How sustainable reconstruction and recovery framework is considering this from your point of view?
You know, when I was first approached to work on the guidelines, actually, that was one point that I insisted on, that we have a section on heritage. The reason for that is because our area is very, very rich in heritage and archaeology and history and so on. This is one thing. The other thing is, political conflict is about identity. And this is where we have to make sure that we protect our complex, multifaceted identity of the area. We were never one people, one identity. We've always been a mix. We've always been very complex, rich races that are integrated and so on and so forth. And it's a very important thing to keep because this is the way the world needs to go, really, acceptance and so on. But for me, what's interesting, after the port blast, we were all in shock. And what happened and what was very weird is that the youth of the city rushed to help the residents of the area, and they came from all over the city, from all over, different backgrounds and so on and so forth. And they were there, they were on the ground, they were helping people and this and that. And I thought, why are the youth so, interested? I mean, the youth of today are on the internet and they, they're not here, they're not with you really. And of course, the reason behind that was because this particular area right next to the port that was very badly damaged was an area of very distinct character and had a lot of young entrepreneurs that worked there, designers, artists, and so on and so forth. And they had a very rich cultural life. And the youth of the city knew that area and related to it and understood it. So when it was hit, they related, they identified with it and rushed to help out. And this is why I honestly believe in heritage, because heritage gives you a sense of identity. That particular area next to the port was an area of sort of mandate period buildings and the sort of Ottoman and early modern and so on, with a beautiful urban form also, very, very environmentally, successful. buildings of 4 to 5 floors high, all overlooking the public spaces and so on. So there are a lot of lessons there. And now at the Department of Architecture at AUB, of which I'm a member, we've actually worked with UNESCO to try and salvage this area, the heritage of this area, because it is important to keep for people to care. For people to care, they need to identify. They need to feel that this place is mine, and therefore, if anything happens, I will go and take care of it. And this is the key to sustainable, I think, any sustainable development, is the of people wanting to protect and work on these developments in their area.
That's very important, Hannah, because I really believe that our region, cultural and heritage cultural and heritage are very important topics in the region, and that should be considered in the reconstruction process from the very early stage.
And they are under threat. We have to be very careful. They are, it's a political decision. They are under threat, so we have to be careful about this.
Yes, and I think that at our framework, the inclusivity of all stakeholders from the very beginning and the integrative way of thinking will make sure that we will consider this and we will work on keeping it as much as we can. And which then, do you like to share any thoughts about the cultural consideration of the framework and the respect of the heritage?
Well, in Palestine, it's very important for us we do respect the heritage very much, especially the buildings. Those who were built before the 1948 areas, we have very high respect to these buildings, and we do continuous. We have organizations who just take care of these buildings and do the rehabilitation. And I'd like to invite everyone to attend our conference, where we'll be having cases like that for preserving our heritage. And yeah, of course, this is very important. It's like a scandal to demolish a very old building in Palestine. So yeah, it is very important to be considered. And I, of course, the framework does respect that.
That's great. And which then would you please also, because as a framework, we always see the challenges and the disasters as opportunities to build back better. Do you have any examples you can share with us how that happened in Palestine?
Yeah, of course, actually. We call it resilience. Many challenges. We face many challenges in Palestine, including the accessibility or the access to water, and the very expensive or very high energy rate, electricity rate, because we mainly buy that from Israeli companies. We have very limited access to our natural resources in general. Well, I believe in Gaza that we have very smart people. They lack the resources, especially some basic building material caused by the blockade, which forces them to recycle almost all the construction waste. And in this case, construction waste actually refers to the demolished buildings. And this is one case from Gaza. I believe that these people are they are extraordinary, and they are very smart. They almost recycle everything. So another case in the West Bank is, of course, the Palestinian Museum. I hope that everyone will have the chance to watch the videos about the museum, which is supposed to be shared, somewhere in the gallery, I guess. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's in the expo space.
Yeah. And at the Palestinian Museum, it was able to achieve LEED Gold certification. It was mainly done by Palestinian experts to show that we have smart and qualified experts in Palestine, and we can easily achieve international certifications. And I believe that this is when education takes place, because also the framework mentions education, and I would do that through capacity building for the targeted groups, whoever they are. And it's worth mentioning also that the Palestinian Museum now is currently, they are working on being marked as net zero or even net positive building, as they have fixed solar panels in the parking area where they can generate electricity and serve as shading structures at the same time. A year ago, they started this project, and now they have the data which proves that they are becoming a net zero building, or net positive, actually.
That's another exciting announcement, Wajdan, that the Palestinian Museum is going to be net zero very soon.
Inshallah.
That's very important, inshallah. I think that this is very important to realize the community resiliency and how we can have such a very big achievement in Palestine. And I would also like to ask Dr. Salah, how do you see the alignments between the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework with Tarsheed rating tool? Are you planning to conduct a crosswalk exercise through your project with the Egyptian government?
Yes, so as a matter of fact, all our rating systems are based on a new and existing, because one of the very important area is the existing buildings, how to convert the existing building to be green. And we have, for example, our rating system is called Tarsheed. We have Tarsheed for residential buildings existing and new, Tarsheed for commercial buildings existing and new, Tarsheed for schools existing and new. And therefore, we believe in the existing buildings are much more important than the new buildings, because we have almost 90% of the buildings are existing. And therefore, we focus from the beginning on how to convert this existing community into green community, this existing building into green building. And I think this is a key issue behind the sustainability. Again, a green building is not a luxury. Green building is a must to save our resources. For example, almost about 3 years ago, we implemented Tarsheed affordable buildings in 3 buildings in the desert area for Royal Herbs. And when we assess the savings, we found in the water was saved by almost 60%, energy saved by about 50%, and that is huge. And therefore, we have very strong belief to convert the whole buildings, the whole communities into green. And that is part of our mission in the Egypt Green Building Council. But also, I would like to go back to the comment of Raji and also comment of Wajdan related to the recycling of construction and demolition waste. In our countries, we have millions of tons of construction and demolition waste. And I think my dream in Egypt GBC is to provide some kind of technology to convert this demolition and construction waste into building materials. And one day, which we are planning, inshallah, in the future, to have, or to integrate the building materials out of the recycled waste, whether it is bricks or paving tiles or interlocks made out of recycled waste. This will save a lot of resources and also will save, this kind of visual image of the construction waste, accumulated in the desert areas. And I think this is one of the very important basics for sustainability.
Thank you, Dr. Salah. I think I totally agree with you. This should be considered, especially the waste issues with reconstruction. Debris and waste is very important. Raji, I would like to ask you about how do you foresee more development will be needed next in the more detailed guidance of this framework? How are we going to develop it?
Well, the first thing is that I think there will be some localization and to work in each country, because each country has different aspects of reconstruction, and we saw the 4 countries. Each country was talking about different subjects and how it's going to be done. Second, I think after implementing it in the 4 countries, maybe in a year's time, we come back with feedback from all the GBCs and the people who implement it on the ground to see where we can enhance and make sure that, as Christina said at the beginning, it's a live document. So we can keep adding, deleting, changing on it. So it's 2 things. The first thing is that we localize it so it fits Palestine, fits Lebanon, fits Jordan, Egypt, or when we get a feedback, we have to make sure that we include it and upgrade it as we go.
Thank you, Raji. That's very important. And this is actually on our plan to localize the framework and we are going to work with our green building councils to create a training material for all the stakeholders that will be engaged in the process later on. Wajdan, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yes, I think just like what Raji mentioned, we need to widen or expand the stakeholder engagement. We might include municipalities or local authorities, maybe to talk to refugees or people who are, who are affected by the conflicts, the aid organizations, on the local NGOs as well. We, to be able to maybe adopt or make it applicable or more adaptation, to do more adaptation for the framework. This is one thing. From another point, I would recommend working with the GBCs to be able to document and share cases and best practices to that we can share together and learn from each other's experience. I would hear, I recall my cooperation with the Amman Greater Municipality. Actually, they were sharing their experience in establishing the resilience plan. That was an amazing session. They did a session for us. We have invited the municipalities, and I think that was amazing. I would urge GBCs in the MENA to work together and to share more experience. And finally, to be able to come up with training material for the local authorities in Palestine. We need to have it in Arabic. We need to have the framework in Arabic.
That would be a very interesting to all work on this, because I think that this will help us make it accessible for everyone everywhere, and this is why World Green Building Council is here. Hannah, do you have any thoughts about how do you see the development of this framework going?
Well, I think, from if you want the technical point of view, there was a lot of work done, and there's a lot of information, and I don't know if we basically had the first stage of this project. We gathered different case studies and different guidelines and rating systems into a digital library, which I hope will become accessible to people. So there is a lot of information there from a technical point of view. What we find is always problematic is the whole issue of governance, of how you deal with financing, how do you control it, that kind of thing, which, as I understand it, when we first started this project, Chatham House was supposed to help us with that, because this is extremely important, the whole running of the show. There's a lot of issues in terms of what do you phase? How do you phase a project? Because sometimes the funding does not come all in one go. So you need to learn about phasing. You need to learn about, the planning and so on, and train people who are going to be there for the rest of the session after the work is done. How to monitor, how to answer needs, etc. Maintain projects. I mean, this is one problem that we always have, is that projects get done, everything is wonderful, and then nobody looks at them for another 20 years, or they just fall apart. So this aspect is extremely important. So I think from this point of view, it's important that there is a technical training in terms of running and management and governance for also transparency. But one thing I'd also like to point out is that, in terms of the localization of the framework, yes, definitely each country has their own situation, etc. But I just want to point out that things like pollution, I mean, we talk about debris. After the 2006 war, there was a lot of debris that happened, and even after the civil war in Lebanon. And what they did, the easiest solution was to just dump it in the sea. So now the sea is the Mediterranean, and it is the sea that we all share, actually, except for Jordan. But and we share with the European Union and so on. So really, issues of pollution is global. We cannot just simply say to a country, okay, you deal with your solutions. There has to be consequences for pollution, and there has to be, help also, because some countries don't have the ability to set up recycling, manufacturing areas, and so on and so forth. So I think from the pollution point of view, it is something that needs to be addressed at the global level.
I totally agree with you. Pollution is very crucial. And I think that the phasing part you mentioned is also very important, because it's not only about the assessing and implementation phase of a project, it's also about the operation and maintenance. So I think that this will be a very important thing that we can all work together on this for developing the framework on the coming stages. Dr. Salah, please share with us your dreams and your thoughts about how we can develop this framework.
I think we can divide the action plan for this framework into two major parts. The first part is capacity building, awareness about the importance and how to do this and that. But the most important part is to include some pilot projects. I think it is very important to do some pilot project demonstrated for every action to be taken. Because again, our main role is not only to develop a capacity building, to aware the people about how, the benefits behind it, but I think it is very important to convert it to action plan. And action plan, before even localization, action plan should include a lot of pilot projects. Like, for example, when I said construction and demolition waste, I think in the MENA region, we have millions of tons of construction and demolition waste. We have to demonstrate how to convert this kind of waste into paving interlocks, into paving tiles, into bricks. And by this way, we can see not only the technology, but also the feasibility study of that. And therefore, once we have this, then we might be able in the future to build the whole building out of recycled materials under one condition, quality and environmental quality and technical quality. And therefore, I think my dream is to have one day all this kind of waste to convert it into construction materials, and not only recycled content. We want to have 100% of the recycled of the construction demolition waste recycled into building materials. And again, this will save a huge amount of resources. And I believe in the MENA region there is, I don't like to say millions, it is 100 millions of tons. If you go to desert, if you go to the water canals, you see billions of tons accumulated over each other. Then we have a lot of technology all over the MENA region to convert this kind of waste into building materials. And therefore, if we documented in a pilot project, integrate within this training manual, this will help everybody to take action plan and and reconstruct our building. This is again, it's a dream, but I'm sure it is workable, and we have a lot of projects in Egypt, I'm sure in Palestine, I'm sure in Jordan, I'm sure in Lebanon, but we can put all these pilot projects in one package and then train the people how to do it.
That's a very important idea, Dr. Salah, having a pilot project where all people can collaborate and work on, and having a hands-on example of the implementation of the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery Framework might be also a very important step for the development of this framework. And I think this will answer your question, Wajdan, about having more case studies. Maybe we can create the case studies, not waiting to go and search for case studies. So I think that we can start
exactly. Actually, what I wanted is that, to document and share. Of course, we have many case studies everywhere.
Yeah,
we do have. So, I remember that in the museum itself, the construction waste, we were able to convert over 95% of the construction waste into recycling.
That's very interesting. Yeah. So I think that this could also be a collective efforts we can all work on after the launch of the framework. We can all work on that and use our digital library and have our pilot project and document the existing case studies. I think that we have a lot of questions from the audience. Let's go through them. We have a question from Karim El-Gendi. He says, reconstruction is primarily about countries which have experienced damage in regional conflicts. How much engagement has there then with municipalities in those countries, and with refugee camps in regional countries? Who would like to share with us this question?
Well, from my point of view, it's very complicated because we have, for the UN. Actually, my answer is it depends on the services that the municipality is offering. For example, in the refugee camps in Palestine, the UN are responsible for the main services, okay? Especially, for example, the solid waste, the schools, so the UN has some role. But the municipalities itself, if it's like the case in Gaza, for example, it depends on what services they offer. Some municipalities in Palestine, they handle the water supply. In some other cases, there is a company that a water undertake takes the supply of water as part of their. It's what they do actually. But in some cases, also some municipalities, like in Hebron, they control the electricity service. So in other cases, there are electricity companies, separated electricity companies. So it's complicated, and it depends. It's a case by case, But the municipalities are the small local authorities. They're definitely the small local authorities within these areas, and they're supposed to provide the key services in general. But after all, there should be, in the crisis time, there should be a cooperation between all these entities. They should work together to come up with a solution or to do some, some aid for the people who are in need.
And I think that here comes the framework role, where it will be supporting municipalities to start the transition from conflict to recovery. So I think that this is important to be considered, and the framework will help in this process as well. Let's see what other questions we have. We have a question from Olive. What are recommendations of conserving the heritage of people? I think, Hannah, this is going to be for you. While handling reconstruction, especially on how to prioritize what elements of culture are reinstated while rebuilding, and is this included in the framework?
Yes, I think in terms of the heritage and the reconstruction, we did deal with this issue, and the idea here is that you need to have input from the community to understand what it is that they mean by heritage. And here, what we mean by community is not just people who are living there, but also the larger context, the city and people, how they perceive the place. And even the people that left, because of conflict and so on. A lot of people leave the country and so on. So this is where we recommended even having a digital platform where you can communicate with the diaspora, the people that left, the refugees and so on, and really build up an idea of what is meaningful for them. Because that is, at the end of the day, the issue of culture. I mean, some is pretty obvious, but there are certain things that are related to historic events that someone might not know about, but that is extremely important. For example, in the post area, on the post-blast area of the port, we, again, through our studies of the heritage of the area and so on, we found that there are certain routes that certain Christian sects actually follow during Easter, and these are extremely important. They go from one place to the church and so on. So there's a whole layer of ritual also that comes in. So I think here the talking to the community is key to really understanding what is meant by heritage. And this is something that we did include in the framework. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah. Let's see what's next. Well, a question from Wissam. She says, it's a very interesting discussion. Is there plans, vision for integrating AI, the Internet of Things, within the framework? For example, capacity building, community awareness. How can we integrate the AI and the technologies in doing this? Do we have any thoughts on this? I think that's a very interesting question, Wissam, and it is going to be very helpful. Thank you for this question.
Well, actually, this is the future. If we do not start thinking of integrating artificial intelligence on all our projects, especially such projects that target different communities, and you need to be able to pass the message in a proper way. You need to make sure that trainings are done in a proper way that does not require you to be there every time you want to train anybody. So having a technology behind the framework is extremely important.
I totally agree with you, Raji. I totally agree with you, because in the MENA region, climate change is here. We are not still waiting for it.
Yeah.
And we need a shortcut. We need something to accelerate our movements toward real actions on the ground in the for sustainable built environments. So I think that integrating the technologies, AI, and everything might act as our shortcut for faster actions. Thank you, Wissam, for the question. Do we have any other questions? And thank you, Raji, for your answer.
Okay.
Maya Alwani, she says, how can we, advocates and industry stakeholders, help World Green Building Council and MENA Green Building Council to promote the framework in our countries and advance its implementation? I would imagine it similar to SDGs, where each rating system can also map its measures to the framework. Thank you, Mai, for the question. Who can help us answer this? Can you help us, Dr. Salah?
I think, as I said before, it's very important to have a national rating system for green buildings and integrate the framework within not only the reconstruction only, but also within the existing buildings. Because again, within the existing building, we need to do some renovations. And therefore, I think this will help a lot. This will help a lot to improve the natural resources or the use of natural resources in our existing buildings. Because I have very strong belief in the key issue behind green building is not the new buildings, it is the existing buildings. And we have to focus on this, and maybe we can tailor this framework to be included somehow within the existing buildings. Some kind of training manuals, this will help a lot with a pilot project. I think I'm emphasizing about the pilot project. This is very important to be implemented all over the MENA region.
Yes, I agree with you, Dr. Salah. And your question actually is emphasizing the main intent or the main objective of our framework. The framework is similar to what you said, something you can align with, like SDGs. It's not a rating tool. We already have, each Green Building Council has its own rating tool. So it's a roadmap. And having crosswalks between the green building rating tool, the existing green building rating tool, and the framework could be the start point for your question. This is what I think. And I also think that having a verification and measurement tool like your local green building rating tool is very important, because this is what we always say: you can't manage what you don't measure. So I just can't say that I will follow the framework, the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery framework, but what is my measurement and verification tool to make sure that I am aligned with the framework? So that's why we have to do this exercise, having the crosswalks and figuring out how we can implement this on the ground through pilot project, as Dr. Salah suggested, and verifying this and measuring this through our local rating tools. So thank you, Mai, so much for this question, and thank you, Dr. Salah.
I can also add to her point that marketing, she said advocates and industry stakeholders, they can also support with increasing the awareness of people and do some kind of, we have now elections in the municipalities, and they need to market themselves. So some of them actually, they are using environment as part of their plans. And this is good. This is amazing. If we can advocate more, if we can have people to, push mayors or potential mayors to adopt such frameworks within their work, I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Wajdan. Having advocates supporting that framework from different stakeholders could be also could be very strong point through the implementation process of the framework. Thank you for sharing this as well. Do we have any other questions? Let's check.
In the meantime, we have, in Lebanon, we did a rating system a local rating system called ERS. And we actually started with existing building because it was much simpler than going into new projects, and the whole process was much simpler. But what is interesting about the ERS system, which is available to all locals free of charge, and they can look at it and see it and so on, is that it very much deals with the local context, and it very much relates to the situation in the country. For example, it does not deal with things that the developer does not have any control over, such as the transport, such as bicycle lanes and things like this, which of course is part of LEED, but very much understands the context and tailors the rating in relation to the context. And they have around 120 categories. Lately, they're going to launch the new building for new building, and that's going to cover different buildings such as commercial, education, housing, etc. And they have, again, as I said, 120 criteria of quantitative measures. So that it's very scientific, straight, and so on, straightforward, that people can use. So I think, yes, the local rating systems are a great tool.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It's so different, yes.
Yes, for measurement and verification, this is very important, and I'm happy that we are already having Tarshid and ours. This could be our next step, having this kind of alignment. We have a question from Mariam. She says, it is known that CO2 emissions from building is around 40% worldwide. Is there statistics how much is CO2 emissions from buildings by region? Do we have statistics for each region as an emissions?
I'm sure it's available. It's not in hand in front of us now, but I'm sure it's available on many websites.
And I would like to tell you that the report is here. I would also like to tell everyone that the Sustainable Reconstruction and Recovery report is here, and you can all have access to it. We will share with you the website, and I would like to thank all our panels today. Thank you, Hannah, Raji, Wajdan, Dr. Salah, for all your support and all your thoughts on this. And we are really looking forward to work together on this and developing it on the ground and having pilot projects on the ground. And I really believe that this framework could also be implemented not only in the MENA region, but in a lot of regions in the world that are suffering from reconstruction. And I really wish that we can all work together on developing this. Thank you, everyone, for being with us in the Congress, and thank you, our panelists today. I will go back to Hind and Francis. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Amira. This is such an important piece of work that will support the reconstruction of built environments in communities in many countries, beyond the Middle East and North Africa as well. For example, in a country like Kenya, there's so much need for integrating sustainability principles, especially when reconstructing the built environment in cities that are rapidly urbanizing. What do you think, Hind? So sorry, Hind, I'll just interrupt you for a moment as you unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Sorry about that. So I definitely agree with you, Francis, and I think for such challenges, many of us as city inhabitants can definitely agree and relate to that. And similarly in Jordan, if I'm gonna tap on that context, the rapid growth has definitely set many challenges for city planners, and such framework can provide actionable approach for sustainable solutions and tools on how to manage the urban sprawl and to rebuild better, more sustainable, and definitely more inclusive. Well, that was one great session, and there are many yet to come. But for now, we will be having a 30 minutes break. And remember, while our Congress today is completely virtual, we still have an opportunity to network and meet fellow sustainability colleagues. Francis, would you like to tell us more how to access the network area?
Of course, Hind. So during the 30-minute break, please take advantage of the networking function of this platform. You can click on the networking icon in the vertical menu to your left. There you will be automatically connected to chat with other Congress participants. If you're not feeling chatty today, you can check out the expo instead to learn about a few exciting projects across the Middle East and Africa. We hope you enjoy networking and the expo, and we'll see you back here on the main stage at 2:30 p.m. GMT. See you in 30 minutes. Bye.
Bye-bye.